We're going to look at the ego thought system a little bit more closely. So we're going to start with a course premise. Either God is insane or the ego is insane. When we think about insanity, we can consider it a break from reality. When we say God's insane or the ego's insane, we really have to look at the course descriptions of the world. It's a garden of agony and death. It's a place where starved and thirsty creatures come to die. And we live our little lives until we turn to dust. So basically, God would be insane if he created such a world where safety has no meaning and we don't have sufficient knowledge to make any decisions here. We kind of struggle and put together scraps and rely on imperfect perceptions, imperfect memory to find our way and know whether to turn left or right. We have to rely heavily on the past in order to move forward and trust that things are going to be as they were. So the idea that the ego is insane is really saying there can't be a world. It's the problem of evil. Holy, loving, omniscient, and all-powerful God could not make such a world, or else he'd be insane. So how is the world here? Is God not all-loving or not omniscient or not all-powerful? Or is the ego insane and separated from reality by a belief system? So when we look more closely at the ego, we can look at some of the descriptions for that. The ego is a thing of madness and despair. Even though it believes it killed God and that separated from heaven, it still seeks special favor from him and wants his blessing. The ego is the darkness. So in lesson 93, which I'm not find the name for the lesson. I forgot the name of the lesson. Lesson 93 is, I should have had that open, I think. Light and joy and peace abide in me. So in the workbook, lesson 93 says, light and joy and peace abide in me. And the very first line of that lesson is, you think you are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. So that really leads to understanding when you join with the ego thought system, you become that ego thought system. You believe you are an ego and it's within you. So everything the Course says in describing the ego or specialness now applies to us. We think we're the home of evil, darkness, and sin because we joined with the ego thought system. When we join with the Holy Spirit thought system, we become a part of that. We are the reflection. Our experience is the reflection, and we thereafter know ourselves differently. But while we talk about the ego as though it's a voice in our head, as though it's counseling us in order to separate from the belief that I am this thing of madness and despair. I'm the thing. The ego says the ego is a thing of madness and despair, and he's talking about me. He's not talking about a voice that's counseling me. So when we begin to see ourselves more as having a choice, whether I can listen to the ego voice that tells me what I am, or I can listen to the Holy Spirit's voice telling me what I am, we are trying to disassociate from the thought system we seem to be a part of. So we identify with that thought system, and that turning our back on heaven and wanting something else. Everything is not good enough. God's love isn't good enough. I'm going to believe in separation. The accepting the idea of separation is not by accident. And one of the things that we need to realize is that it was a choice we made. The Son of God can make no choice in which he does not understand the consequences. Now, part of those consequences in believing in separation is to forget. It's necessary to forget that choice, or the illusion wouldn't last. It wouldn't last a second. So we have to forget what we wanted and see ourselves as victims of a world we can't control so that we can maintain that world. Those defenses, the veil of forgetfulness that falls over us is a defense against the truth to prevent the memory of God returning to us. And you can say, why would we want such a thing? We are in so much pain. We are, feeling this desire to return to God. We want that love back, and we seek for that love outside of us. But if we can begin to accept the idea, no, I'm experiencing my life the way I want to experience it. And what I really want is God to acknowledge my dream and my individual self and my ego and bestow blessings on me. That's specialness. Specialness is the desire. It's basically, specialness is described in the Course in a lot of different, in different terms. Specialness is the seal of treachery on the gift of love. Specialness is faith only in your little self. It's specialness is the idea of sin made real. We can talk about it here as being just individuality and the desire for separation from heaven. I don't want to be a part of everything. I want to be special, and I want special things that other people don't have. So what do we do as egos? We take that hatred, anger we had, which led us to believe in separation. Like, I don't want to be a part of this. And we take that hatred that's in our minds and the murderous intent to kill God that we, in our madness, think we feel, and we project it out onto others. So when you look at the world and you see the problem in the world, you'll always try to solve it where you think it exists. And we spend our lives solving problem after problem. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. Sometimes the world's problems seem to go away, and sometimes they seem to linger for our whole lives. And what we do here is we blame other people. We watch what they do, and we send out the hungry dogs of fear to bring us back messages of their guilt. And that prevents us from experiencing our own. By projecting it onto someone else, I can relieve myself of my own guilt and shame for what I believe I've done. I'm not the bad guy. The bad guy's outside of me. I'm better by comparison. In this world, we can't stop making comparisons. It's dictated by the differences that we perceive. Love makes no comparison because in heaven, we experience oneness instead of two-ness. So when we try to look calmly on this mess that seems to be the world, seems to be ourself, seems to be our lives, say, oh, I just can't make it work. I can't make this work. I try so hard to make it work. And it won't, whether I think it's someone else's fault or the fault of circumstances. Even if I think it's my fault, that's still putting blame on something that seems to be outside of the mind. Whatever we choose to blame here, wherever we choose to see the guilt, it still holds the whole thing together, because guilt is the bread and butter of this world. We have to see guilt. We have to judge. If we did not judge, and if we did not see guilt outside of our minds, then it wouldn't last. It would disappear and go back into the nothingness from which it came. But a total healing is terrifying. The idea that we'll just be swept away into some oneness if we wake up. So we just take the steps. First, we have to call into question the premise that we know anything. Either God's insane or the ego's insane. So either God's insane or I'm insane because I have identified as an ego. So if on some level you can see you believe in God and you believe God is all loving, all knowing, and omniscient and all powerful, all loving, all knowing, all powerful, then it would have to dawn on you at some point in time that it's you who's the insane one, not God. And if I'm the insane one, then I can't be sure of anything. Then I would have to turn to God or the Holy Spirit or my inner guide and say, I don't know anything. I'm not certain of anything at all. I have no, I walk around uncertainly and I'm making decisions based on insufficient information about everything. That is a welcoming. That is an open door. That is a little hole in the brick wall we have erected to prevent us from remembering God. And when we say remembering God, we're talking about experiencing his love. Whether we experience that as a body and think, oh, I just received a gift as me, this tiny, insignificant little person in this world. Or if I say, I am a part of what I just received, and so is everything else in this world. Nothing is what I think it is. My thoughts have no meaning. The thoughts that are real are the thoughts you think with God. Can I really say I'm thinking thoughts with God about what I'm going to do next or where I'm going to go? We can be still and ask for guidance and experience ourselves receiving that guidance. But what I really want is not some trifling bit of advice about what to do in this insane world before I die. What I want is the larger healing, the healing that makes this meaningless. Otherwise, it's just a series of adventures. Well, now I'm going to go get in my car. Come on, God, let's go see what the body's going to do next until it stops moving and I'm put in the ground. It's just, it's like asking God to join us in our littleness, you know? So another way of saying that, and this is really from the Song of Prayer, the supplement, is that we keep asking for the notes instead of the song. So if I say, help me find this parking spot, and then I find the perfect parking spot, and I feel this lightness and happiness, that is a note of heaven's song, but it is not the song. And it's the experience and the awakening that we walk towards. And sometimes we're thrust far away from it, it seems. But as we move around the world as egos, there's only one game to play in town, and that is forgiveness. All the other games are the ego games, but forgiveness is the undoing of the ego games. Forgiveness says, I do not fear the ego. Forgiveness says, I don't blame anything outside of me for what is happening. Forgiveness is looking with him because he knows the truth and knows that we dream. And he or she, our guide, is the only way for us. So we'll keep doing what we do because egos do what egos do until final choice is made. The way I think about it is we practice the course. We do exactly what he says. We have the rules for decision making. We understand the laws of chaos. We know what seems to be happening around here, a perfect reflection of a thought of hatred and separation. And it's going to be reflected all around us, and our eyes are going to report back division and conflict. And we really don't have a space to understand conflict isn't real. Conflict is made up. So we just practice. We spend our lives practicing. And ultimately, when we experience the reflection of God's love, the reflection of heaven, the reflection of peace and truth, it will always appear to be a gift. In the end, we'll see we need do nothing. We never needed to do anything, and we never did anything. Nothing happened, except we dreamed a dream in which God seemed to disappear, and hatred took his place, and strife took his place, and gruesome images took his place. And we heard about those images, and we saw them, and we believed they were true. The undoing of that is our lifelong process. Live so as to demonstrate you are not an ego. Thanks for listening.